Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It's so great to see all of you again. Thank you for joining me today. I have a nice hot beverage and a couch. This is great. Let me tell you though, the work that went into getting this here was it was a lot. It was a bit much, I'll be honest. But it was worth it. We have a couch now. We have a table that we haven't set up yet, but we'll get it set up soon. It'll be great. But today, we're going to be talking about traveling and finding good coffee. And how often have you traveled to a new city and been like, man, I have no idea where to go to get good coffee? Well, don't worry, I got the answer for you. So yeah, like I said, we are going to talk about traveling and coffee. And I know we can't really travel as much as we normally can, but I figure this is a perfect time to talk about it so that the next time you get on a plane, you go on a road trip, you'll end up in that new city. Instead of being like, oh my goodness, where do I go to find good coffee? You'll have these tips and you will know what to do. So let's just get right into it, honestly. So for me personally, if I am going to a new city, a new state, if I'm gonna be somewhere, even if it's just for a couple hours, I really like to experience the city and go somewhere and get coffee. I don't wanna just go to a Starbucks or like a gas station. I wanna like find somewhere with good coffee and really just experience a nice local coffee shop, because in that sense you kind of do feel a little more like a local. You kind of feel like you're there a little more settled in, and at the end of the day you're gonna get a better cup of coffee than you're gonna get at a Starbucks or at a gas station. Now, sometimes you're road tripping, you need a quick pick-me-up, some caffeine, you don't have time to drive 20 minutes out of the way to find a coffee, so you work with what you get and you get the gas station. But when you do have that time, there's a few things you can do to make sure you're getting the best coffee that you can. So here are my 5 tips for how to find good coffee no matter where you travel. Number 1, do your research ahead of time if you can. If you know you're gonna be flying into Chicago and have a 5-hour layover where you're gonna be, walking around and going to the train station or something, do your research ahead of time and kind of look and see what's gonna be near you and kind of look then. Because if you do the research ahead of time, you will avoid getting off your flight and only having a couple hours and kind of feeling in a rush and then just kind of giving up or having a bad experience at a shop because you didn't really have the time to look into it. So if you have the time, do a little research ahead of time. Even if it's just 10 minutes of kind of doing some of these steps of researching and looking at reviews, do that ahead of time and I promise you, your experience will be so much better. Tip number 2, use Yelp reviews, people. Use them. They are great. Now, there's some things you need to look for. For me personally, I like really nice espresso. I like a good coffee without any kind of sweetener in it. So when I'm looking at Yelp reviews, I'm making sure to check not just the reviews on good coffee overall, but what they actually got. So if there's 10 reviews on, their mochas, their vanilla lattes, and they're really tasty, but there's a few reviews on, maybe a flat white or a latte, and they're not quite as good, it might make me a little wary of that place, because if they need sweetener to make their coffee taste good and the reviews where there's not sweetener are bad, then I'm a little concerned about that coffee. So if you're looking for a nice espresso, maybe an Americano, something without sugar, make sure you're looking at the reviews for those beverages. Now, if you're looking for a really nice iced vanilla latte, maybe it's just a nice hot day and you want something to sip on while you walk around the city or something, then look at those reviews, because there are shops that make amazing espresso and Americanos and they taste incredible, but maybe you're not a fan of their vanilla and you don't really like their syrup, or they don't even have sweeteners because that's just how freaking bougie they are. They just don't even have it. So make sure, whatever your preferable drink is when you're visiting a new coffee shop, make sure that's kind of the review that you are looking for. So if you want sweet, look at the reviews of sweet drinks. If you want not sweet and Americanos and black coffee, look at those reviews. Otherwise, you're gonna get there and you're gonna say, oh, I looked at these reviews, the vanilla line, all these things tasted good, and then you're gonna get an Americano, and you could end up being disappointed because all the reviews that were good were talking about the sweet coffee. Tip number 3 is use Google Maps. So Google Maps is a great way to see all of the options you have around where you are. So maybe it's last minute or maybe it's ahead of time and you know that you're gonna be getting let's go back to Chicago. You're gonna be getting out of O'Hare, taking a train into the city, and you kind of want to see what is around, the stop that you're getting off the metro. So you kind of look around, use Google Maps to see all of the coffee shops that are in that area. And then you can do a quick look of reviews and kind of how many star reviews they have. Not always, they don't always have to be perfect, don't always have to be 5 stars, but if they're getting like 2 stars, then maybe be a little wary and look at the reviews, but maybe move on to something else. But yeah, use Google Maps to kind of do a little more broad search, and then use Google reviews and Yelp reviews to kind of narrow it down to what you're actually looking for and, specific coffees you're looking for. Now the 4th tip, and this could be a little controversial, is to use the photos of the shop to make a decision. Now, before some of you start screaming at me and saying, don't make a decision based on photos, now I have reasons. So 1, if you look at the photos, you can at least tell if the shop looks nice. If it's a place that you're planning on sitting, maybe getting some work done, just chilling for a little while in between some things, if it looks really nice inside and you like the aesthetic, then maybe you don't need the coffee to be as nice. If the coffee ends up not being as good, then you might be all right with it because you really enjoy the inside and they have comfortable seating. Whereas if it doesn't look good and the coffee's bad, well then you're just gonna be really disappointed because you're gonna be drinking a really crappy flat white sitting on a plastic chair, which is never enjoyable. So yeah, use the photos to kind of get a feel for the aesthetic and if it's somewhere that you would like to sit. Now, on that same note, also I a lot of times use the photos, and people are really gonna hate me for this one honestly, but to look at the equipment that shops are using, because there is good coffee that can be made with cheaper quality equipment, but when you're visiting a city, you only have 2 hours to find a shop, you really wanna make sure it's good. 8, 9 times out of 10, the shops with the more expensive, higher end equipment, the La Marzocco's, the grinders by Malkoning, all those things, they will make better coffee because they have dropped $10,000 on a grinder, $30,000 on an espresso machine, and they want to make sure they're making the best coffee they can for you. So a lot of times that can be a good factor to add in with the aesthetic part. Along with this point kind of has like 3 parts to it. Look at the photos and see if any of their drinks have latte art. And now this is really where people are gonna scream, because no, latte art does not make a good coffee. But again, it's like the equipment. If you have trained your baristas to steam milk properly and pour it properly, then what else have you trained your baristas to do? Probably extract a good shot of espresso and everything. So you kind of have to use these 3 things, looking at the aesthetics, looking at the equipment they use, and looking at the latte art, and use them all together to kind of make an informed decision about the shop. And you can get a good idea of how well a place cares for their actual shop, which in turn will probably mean they care for their espresso, they care for their coffee, which is always good. Now, 5th point, final one, if you know someone that lives in the city, ask them. Just shoot them a text, shoot them a message, and just ask them honestly. And if you don't know anyone that lives on the city, go on Instagram, look up that city name, look up coffee, see what you can find, and I am sure you will get a whole list of great coffees, because there are so many cities now in the US that are, especially larger cities, more populated, that have so many incredible coffee shops that you could visit a lot of cities for a week, 2 weeks, and never hit every coffee shop they have. So if you use Friends, if you use tools like Instagram and other social media, you should get a good idea of what you can find. Now, all these points in, you could still do all of these things, walk in confidently to a shop, and be like, I'm gonna get a great drink today, and like I've done before, walk away with a really subpar beverage. And honestly, that's a disappointment, but it's also the risk that you're going to take. Yeah, you could go to a Starbucks and know that you're going to get this very sweet beverage, you can know exactly what you're gonna get, but for me, it's kind of the mystery, it's the adventure in finding these new shops, these new places. And some of the times I've done this, one of my new favorite shops is Mojo in Chicago. There's 2 locations and it's about a quarter of a mile from, no, just kidding. It's like a block from the Amtrak station, and it is my favorite place to stop because I will take a lot of times a flight into Chicago, I'll go into the city and take an Amtrak up to Michigan. So a lot of times I have a couple hours to kill it, and I found this coffee shop about 1.5 years ago when I was there in the winter, and the vibe inside is incredible. The coffee tastes delicious, and it's just become one of my favorite places to hang out in Chicago. And I never would have found that if I just, stuck to grabbing a Starbucks on the way to the station or something. So if you take that little extra time to really put some time and effort into it, you may find your new favorite coffee shop. And along the way, if you do this enough, you will find coffee shops that you just despise and will never go to. But again, that is the risk in life. If you're gonna take a little adventure and a little risk, you might fail sometimes, and then you'll just know never to go back there. And you can learn from that and figure out, did I not read enough reviews? Was I reading something wrong? Maybe it was just a bad day for the shop. You never know. Like I said though, some of the best coffee shops that I have found are one of the ones that I look up as we're walking with friends, as anything is going on, that I barely put any research into, and I just kind of find them. And they're just there. They're literal holes in the walls sometimes, and they become some of my favorite coffee shops. So if you put in the work, I promise you will find great coffee on your next trip. And if you're not sure what to do, if you need recommendations, hit me up. I know a lot of coffee in a lot of different cities, and especially if there's a major flight that goes into it, like LA, Chicago, Seattle, Dallas, New York, all those. I know a lot of great coffee shops. So hit me up if you want some recommendations, some ideas, or if you're just looking up one and being like, man, I really don't know if this is a good coffee shop, shoot me a little DM. We'll talk about it. We'll see if it seems like a good shot or not. If it's not, well then we'll both know it. If it is, then we'll both know, and I'll hit it up the next time I'm in that city. But thank you all so much for joining me today. It is wonderful to be back with you. I am so excited to be making coffee, making content, all those good things. I'm excited for us to have a dining room table now that we have a couch. So maybe by the next time the next video comes out, we'll have a dining room table, which we will, because it's sitting over there. We're just too lazy to set it up yet, so whoops. But thank you all for joining. I appreciate every single one of you. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Follow me on Instagram and check out the podcast. Bye. Love you all.